Cost almost $23,000 for that particular election that the school board was billed for. And of course, that's not something that we budgeted for. It wasn't something that they budgeted for because it wasn't something that was planned or anticipated. Due to the untimely death of Tyreek Robinson, were the reason why they had to have that special election. So they had to find the funds somewhere to cover the cost of that election.
They had to find the funds. So, and basically, our tax dollars, as taxpayers in Richmond County, we paid for that election, a cost of over $20,000,
Exactly.
and we wound up with 123 people going to the polls.
That is correct.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, we wasted our own money if we didn't go vote.
Well, that you're exactly right.
Local Matters family. Today, our guest is none other than Mr. Travis Doss. He is the Director of Voter Registration and Elections for Richmond County, Georgia. How are you doing today, Travis?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am wonderful. So glad that you're able to join us because this is voter registration month. So we felt there was no better person to come in and talk some about what it takes to get registered, the easiest way to do it, getting absentee ballots because it's almost election time again. So we'll have some things on the ballot in Richmond County that we'll also share with our listeners. So thanks so much for being willing to help educate the public. Please tell me, start off. Always we ask our guests to just tell a little bit about themselves. So what would you like our Local Matters listeners to know about
Well,
Travis?
yes. Well, thank you for inviting me on. It's always great to be given an opportunity to talk to the public, and I appreciate your listeners out there that are interested in local matters, local elections. Well, I was born and raised here in Augusta, Georgia. I attended public school. I graduated from A.R. Johnson Health Professions High School. I was in the second graduating class at A.R. Johnson. I graduated with a bachelor's degree at Augusta College. I like to preface it that I actually went to Augusta College before it became all of the other names it became now as Augusta University. I started working with local government actually in college. I went off to get a graduate's degree, came back and kind of needed a job. So I started working in the civil and magistrate court office before I landed at the Board of Elections. I've been with the Board of Elections since 1995. It's one of those funny things. I mean, no one goes to school to be an elections official or an elections director. It's something that we all kind of have a calling and we find our way there. I worked both with Linda Beasley when she was the elections director for the Secretary of State. I worked with Lynn Bailey for 27 years before she retired. And then my board appointed me as the elections director or executive director back in 2022. So I've been the executive director now for a little over almost 2 years now.
Excellent, excellent. That is a wonderful background, and I think you're right. Nobody just grows up dreaming, I want to be director of registration and elections, but hey, somebody got to do it.
Exactly, exactly.
And I always say sometimes the job is just really low stress, but when it's high stress, it is really high stress.
Oh, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of misconception when talk about the elections office, because of course people feel like, well, when there's not an election going on, what do you do? And this is a great time to talk about that as far as voter registration, because voter registration is something that we do all the time. It's not just seasonal. It's something that is ongoing all of the time, whether it's registering people to vote, whether it's updating their registration, a lot of list maintenance, because when you have 130,000 registered voters in Richmond County, it takes a lot of work to keep track of all those people.
And is that our current number, 130?
It is. It's one. I looked it up right before we got on. It's 130,500 is where we are right now.
And I think that's a little bit off of the all-time high. 'Cause it seems like one time I was hearing a number closer to 139.
It was
But
probably, I think in 2020 we almost got as high as 145, I believe.
wow. Uh-huh.
But there are different list maintenance processes that did not happen prior to the 2020 election. So I do feel that those numbers were just, registration numbers are great, but the important part is getting people out to vote. I mean, we have, you can register to vote all day long, but until you actually go out and vote, that's what, really counts, is actually getting people to the polls and actually casting their votes.
Yeah, and that presents actually a very appropriate segue into one of the major things I want to discuss with you today, and that is the cost of elections, particularly in light of the fact that many times that money seems to be wasted. I use the example of our most recent special election for the District 6 school board race. And we know, special election turnout's always going to be low. But basically, I think you said 123 people went to the polls.
That's right. I mean, there were 16, a little over 16,000 eligible voters in school board District 6, and out of that 16,000, only 123 voted, and that included both election day and advance voting. So the law requires 3 weeks of advance voting, 2 Saturdays. It also include, for that particular election, we had to open all polling places that were in District 6. The law requires at least 3 people at every polling place, and that's just a minimum. I mean, we can't conduct an election with only 3 people because of so many things that have to take place, whether it's checking them in on the poll book, somebody by the scanner, assisting people. So, I mean, I think the minimum that we can have at any polling place and function is about at least 5. And so, one misconception is that people think that poll workers are volunteers. And although they don't make a living, they're not going to make a living as a poll worker. They are paid employees. Again, they're not paid well. They're paid more of a stipend, but it's still, it definitely costs. I mean, just the election that we have coming up in November. I mean, I've budgeted about 130,000 out of 190,000 is the total budget. 130 is just for poll workers alone. So it is extremely costly. And I like to kind of equate elections a lot of time with, throwing a big party, whether it's a wedding or whether it's a birthday party. I mean, you do all of this planning and you have to expend all of this money. And if no one shows up, you've still bought the food, you've still sent the invitations. And that's kind of the way elections are. We have to put the money out there in the hope that people will show up. But that doesn't always happen.
Okay. And yeah, and the where that money comes from, just to clarify for the school board race that we referenced earlier, who's paying for it and how much did they wind up having to pay for
Right.
100?
So because it was a special election, we were contracted with the school board to conduct their election. So it cost almost $23,000 for that particular election that the school board was billed for. And of course, that's not something that, we budgeted for. It wasn't something that they budgeted for because it wasn't something that was planned or anticipated, due to the untimely death of, Tyreek Robinson, were the reason why they had to have that special election. So, they had to find the funds somewhere to cover the cost of that election.
They had to find the funds. So, and basically our tax dollars as taxpayers in Richmond County, we paid for that election a cost of over $20,000.
Exactly.
And we wound up with 123 people going to the polls.
That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically we wasted our own money if we didn't go vote.
Well, that you're exactly right. I mean, that's the thing is, when people don't turn out, it really is a very costly choice because like you said, the taxpayers still paid for that election, whether they, chose to vote or not. It cost the school board, and as you say, the taxpayers who fund the school board, it was money out of their pocket to cover that election.
Wow. Thanks for that clarification. Um, we've got some elections upcoming here in November 7th, I think, in Blythe and Hepzibah, as well as in for all of Richmond County, there'll be the C-SPLOST, Coliseum SPLOST sales tax
That's
vote.
correct, right. The city of Blythe, they have two city council people up for election. They've had four people qualify for that race. Luckily, in the city of Blythe, it's a vote for two type of situation, and it's a plurality vote. So the top two people who get the votes will be the winners. So there should not be any runoff situations with that. However, funny story, back in, I guess it was 2019, there was one seat open, three candidates. The top two vote getters got exactly the exact same number of votes, 46 votes. So we had to have a runoff of an election because the two candidates tied. So, but this time, hopefully that will not happen again. The city of Hepzibah, they had two seats open and they had two people qualify. So technically, they don't have to have an election, but because, as you say, we are having that county-wide election, there will still be the names will be on the ballot. For that county-wide election, that's that C-SPLOST, which is the 0.5% tax on all goods and services for Richmond County that the Coliseum Authority is doing, to raise money for the James Brown Arena.
Okay. Do you want to offer any predictions on what the voter turnout is going to be in Richmond County?
I hate to, predictions are a double-edged sword a lot of times because one, if you're not close enough, people get mad. But on the other hand, people get mad when they say, you're discouraging people to vote because you only think a certain number are going to turn out. But truthfully, I would say, 10% will be a high number. I just, I don't know if it's, I think once we get closer to the time, once people start hearing more information about the election, the turnout, hopefully maybe a little bit better. But that's kind of where I'm somewhere between 7 and 10% turnout.
Yeah. And that is not to discourage anybody from going to the poll.
Oh, I would love, that is the thing that the election people, we would love to be wrong. That is, please make me wrong. Show me that you can turn out and definitely get the vote out, because as you say, it's going to cost regardless of whether people come or not. So that is the encouraging thing to, you talk about, local elections. It's just really sad how when you have local elections, the turnout is so much lower. And, one of the things that I always promote is, presidential elections, people turn out, we get 70-80% during a presidential election. But it's those local elections that really matter. I mean, the school board is making decisions about your taxes. The commission is making decisions about your taxes. The president, he's not going to be the person you call if you have a pothole in front of your street, in front of your house. So it's those local elections that really, really count and really, really matter.
Which is the reason we have the Local Matters podcast.
Exactly.
That is where your quality of life is. You think recreation services are controlled at the local level. public safety services are controlled at the local level, your storm
Exactly.
drainage issues, a lot of the things that you're most concerned about really take place locally. So we will hope you are wrong at that 7 to 10%.
That's right.
Um, but that is one of the risks of having an election when there's no governor's race and no presidential race and no Senate race or anything else on the ballot. It might
Right.
get
You don't get that same type of media coverage. I mean, when you have, a presidential election or a statewide election or federal election or whatnot, I mean, you can't turn on the television without it being talked about. It doesn't matter whether it's local news, national news, radio, Facebook, whatever. But when you have a local election, you just don't get that same drive as far as hearing about it as much, unless you are informed, unless you go out to purposely try and educate yourself about the election.
all right. Right. Next thing wanted to cover with it being voter registration month. What's the easiest way to get registered to vote?
The easiest way is to do it online if you have a driver's license. If you have a driver's license, you can go to the Secretary of State's My Voter page. You key in your driver's license number. It's all just filling out a form. It's automatic. It comes directly to us. If you are updating or changing your driver's license, Georgia is an automatic registration state. So unless you purposely tell the person you do not want to get registered to vote, you will be registered to vote. Your registration will be updated. September the 19th is National Voter Registration Day. We'll have a booth set up here at our office in the municipal building downstairs. If people want to stop by, we also are going to have a table out at Augusta University. They're doing National Voter Registration Day block party. So we will have a table out there as well. You can always, come to our office in the municipal building. People can get registered to vote at the library, if they are applying for services. That's the only difference. You can't just go into the library and get registered to vote. You have to be applying for services.
I'm applying for a library card, for instance, and at the
Exactly.
same time, I can register to vote. Okay.
Exactly. There are different agencies, mandated agencies. Department of Family and Children's Services is another one where people get applications and whatnot. But the easiest thing is to do it online. And even if you don't have a driver's license, there is an option to print the application and drop it in the mail to us to get registered to vote. The registration deadline for this November's election is October the 10th. Like you said, it's 29 days prior to every election is the registration deadline. But registration takes place at any time. You don't have to wait until the deadline, to get registered to vote.
So yeah, you helped me out. There are lots of agencies. You said DFAX and the library, and obviously Department of Vehicle Driver Services. I knew
Yes.
driver services, but those other two can also get you
Yes,
registered.
and then there's also, the recruitment offices at military, Fort Gordon, things like that. They are also one of the mandated agencies. The Health and Human Services is another. So there was many mandated agencies back in '93 when the National Voter Registration Act was written back in '93 that mandated certain agencies as voter registration agencies. But of course, the Department of Driver Services is the number one place for most people registered to vote.
Yeah, it's the big one. And you mentioned also having to upload your driver's or put your driver's license number in if you're registered to vote. Will it accept one of those state issued ID cards as well? Or is
I
it
don't
just
believe it. No, ma'am, it does not. You do have to, it is the actual driver's license as opposed to the state issued ID.
okay? Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. And if we now can kind of turn to a closely related issue, which is that of absentee ballots. Once you get registered to vote, and we talked about sometimes the low turnout, the absentee ballot is a way to vote anyway, even if you can't be on the polls on November 7th or whatever the election day is going to be for that given year. What's the easiest way to request an absentee ballot?
Probably the easiest way, you can download an application from our website or from the Secretary of State's website, but the challenge there is it must be printed. So you have to print it off, sign it, either mail it to us. You can scan it, take a picture of it, and email it to us. But that is I don't know how many people nowadays have printers, so that's a challenge as far as printing the actual form. You don't have to necessarily scan it. You can take a picture from your phone, but you got to get that piece of paper first. You can also come into our office and fill out an application at our office. And of course, we will then mail you a ballot. The other ways, you can call us on the phone and we will mail you an application. But, again, that's a kind of a time-consuming effort because we have to mail you the application, you have to fill it out, and you either have to hand deliver it back to us or mail it back to us. So there are definitely challenges when it comes to getting a mail absentee ballot because you do have to use that state issued form.
Excellent. Okay. Got it. Got it. And the deadline to request an absentee ballot for the November 7th election is?
The last day that you can request one is October 27th. And that is actually 11 days prior to the election. The first day that we will be mailing out the ballots is October 16th, is the first day that we will be mailing them out. And also October 16th is the first day that we start in-person voting as well. So we will have in-person voting here at the municipal building starting at 8:30 on the 16th, and we will run daily from 8:30 to 5 every day. We will have 2 Saturdays, Saturday the 21st and Saturday the 28th will be advanced voting. And on the 28th, that is when our satellite sites will open as well. There will be a slight change in one of our satellite sites because the Henry Brigham Community Center is currently under construction. We have contracted with the Recreation Department to use the Charles Evans Community Center there across from Daniel Field. So that will I got a board meeting coming up and then we will discuss that, but that is a change that we're looking at to move that location temporarily, while Henry Brigham is not available. So starting on the 28th, that's that Saturday, you can come to the municipal building, Robert Howard Community Center, Charles Evans Community Center, or the Warren Road Community Center. And then that last week, the week of the 30th through the 3rd, all 4 locations will be open from 8:30 to 6 p.m. So that gives 3 full weeks of advanced voting. That if a person wants to go ahead and vote early, we strongly encourage that. But of course, election day, November 7th, all polling places in Richmond County will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on election day, since this is a county-wide election.
Got it. And there's a public hearing coming up on the 11th, I believe.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah, because I did make my listeners aware of that last week.
Oh, good. Yes. So the public hearing is on the 11th, and that public hearing is due to 2 polling places that we're having to move. One, again, the Henry Brigham Community Center, we're looking to move them to the Bell Terrace Presbyterian Church, which is right next door. And then also out in Hepzibah, the Hepzibah Carroll Community Center is also being redone, renovated, and whatnot. And so we're looking to move the people to the Oasis Church of Hepzibah, which is down the street at Highway 88 for the elections out there in the city of Hepzibah as well.
Right. All right. We just got a little bit of time left. Uh, Tell me, is there just anything that you wish people knew about your job or your office or about voting more generally that you'd love to share with us today?
Well, but I think that, you hear a lot of stories in the media about, does my vote count? Is my vote counting and whatnot? And, one of the things we stress upon in our office is that you definitely need to be aware, that your vote does count. We do count every vote that is cast election day. We do count every vote that is cast early and every vote that is cast by mail. And the importance in voting goes back, what we were just talking about, that school board race. 123 people showed up and decided a candidate that won by 79 votes. That's representing.
Not by, let's clarify.
I'm sorry, excuse me, you're right. One, yes. He did not win by 79 votes. He got 79 votes. You're exactly right. So, I mean, it was 79 people. Let's put it that way. 79 people decided who was going to be their representative on the school board. And of course, that's not to belittle Mr. Lowry in any way, but just to say that, 79 people made a choice for over 16,000 registered people in that district. I was thinking about a case in the city of Blythe a few years back where there was a tie. I mean, there was 49 people voted for each candidate. I mean, that's just how important every vote is. That the two candidates had a tie, and we had to have a runoff because the two candidates got the same number of votes. So it's always very important to get out, especially as you say, to those local elections. Those are the ones that really matter. And the other thing, when we're talking about registering online at the My Voter page, the important thing is to keep your registration up to date. When you move, we don't know it. If you don't tell us that you've moved, your registration doesn't follow you unless you tell us, and that's an inconvenience if you go to the wrong polling place, because the law doesn't allow you to vote if you're not at the right place. So it's very important to make sure that you know beforehand, where your polling place is.
Right. Thank you so much, Travis, for joining us today. Your presentation has been extremely informative, and I hope our listeners take heed to everything you've said.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And if anybody has any questions and whatnot, please give our office a call.